Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's good to be back. It is good to see everyone. Hello. How are you doing today? I don't suspect today's live chat is going to be like a very big one, but here's the thing. I basically had to do a live chat today or not at all this week. So I definitely still wanted to squeeze one in. I wanted to get a live chat in. Basically, the way my work schedule is going to work out in the next couple days, I'm just not going to be able to stream. So I wanted to make sure I got one in. I really don't like whenever I miss weeks, and there's been quite a few weeks recently that I have missed. So I wanted to make sure that we got one in this week. So we're back. We're good. We are rocking. Even though, it hasn't been the craziest news week, like I said, I wanted to save this for like a Thursday or a Friday if that would have been possible, just to get more news out. There is still a couple big topics that we can talk about, of course. So what are those? First of all, we did just have this announcement from Sega this week that Sega and Microsoft are partnering on a cloud gaming alliance. There's a ton of debate, a ton of discussion online about this. What does it mean? What does this mean for Sega? What does it mean for Microsoft, etc., etc.? We can talk about that. We can break it all down. We can go into detail as much as you want on that. So that's a pretty big one we can talk about. We just found out yesterday during the Activision Blizzard earnings call that Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 are both delayed, both of them, until 2023 at the soonest. They said these games are not coming out next year, and it seems that that was the original plan because they did outright call it a delay, and they said don't expect them next year. So 2023 at the soonest for these games. Continues the turmoil that we see in Blizzard. Again, they're like co-president of Blizzard, like I don't think they're using the word president, but basically the second, just about as high in charge as you can get in Blizzard, another person just left. So we can talk about that, right? What does it mean for Blizzard? What does this mean for Activision? And yeah, so much more, right? We can talk about anything you want to discuss. So for anyone, if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, the way this works, it's a show, it's a stream that's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. We talk about the video game industry. We don't have to talk about the things that I just listed. We can talk about anything in video games. So start dropping those questions down into chat. Usually we stream for about an hour to an hour and a half. I don't know how long or not today's stream will be. It really just depends how many questions there are in chat. Could be a shorter one this week. I'm not quite sure, but we'll get to as much as we can. Two ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the free method. You just type a question, whatever you want, drop it down into chat, and I get to as many free questions as possible. However, if you want to guarantee that you get your question answered, way to do that's going to be super chats. But don't feel pressured, don't feel obligated to donate in chat. Just a way to help support me and the channel, and I get to super chats immediately. One other thing I do want to go over just for all my sales peeps before I start diving into your comments and questions. We did get some sales updates out of Capcom. I'm sure most of you have seen this, but just in case you haven't, I'm going to list those for you really quick. So Monster Hunter World has now crossed 20 million units. It is the biggest Capcom game of all time. So Monster Hunter World just continues to be a colossal success. Just imagine how big Monster Hunter World 2 is going to be. Resident Evil 7 is at 10.2 million, which is incredible. Resident Evil 2 Remake at 8.9 million. Monster Hunter Rise at 7.5 million. That's incredible. That game hasn't even been out for a full year yet, and it's only available on Switch, right? It hasn't come out on PC yet. So 7.5 million units on one platform in less than a year. That's an incredible result for Monster Hunter Rise. Street Fighter V, 6 million. Resident Evil Village has crossed over 5 million. Devil May Cry 5 is at 4.7 million. Best-selling Devil May Cry game of all time. On its way to hit 5 million lifetime. Not quite there, but it'll get there, trust me. Resident Evil 3 Remake at 4.6 million. And Monster Hunter Stories 2 at 1.3 million. So that's the only really big sales update that we got. And I see we already got some questions dropping into chat. So let me start getting to those. Tom here saying, hey man, dropping in from the UK again. What is up, Tom? What is up to the UK? Hope you're doing good. Do you think there are many Star Wars games in production? EA's output has been less than stellar when they had the exclusive license. Yes, from what I understand, there are many Star Wars projects either already spinning up or being explored. One thing that's worth noting is that whenever this exclusive EA contract ended, basically Disney came out and said, they were like, we want your pitches. There was a whole press release that was from Disney, and they were basically literally saying that. They're like, we want your pitches. We want to hear what kind of Star Wars games you want to make. Send them in, right? If you're a dev, if you're a publisher, we want to hear your ideas. We already know that Ubisoft has a Star Wars game coming. We already know that EA is continuing their Star Wars games. Of course, there's going to be a Jedi Fallen Order 2. The first one was a gigantic success, especially for a single-player game. That was like one of the fastest-selling single-player games we've seen in years, right? It really was. Like, it's in that top range of single player selling games. It sold incredible. So of course you're going to get a Fallen Order 2, and I expect many more games in the Star Wars universe to be announced here fairly soon. I think it's a huge mistake if we don't get a Mandalorian game. I don't know if it has to star, Mando from the show, though that would be cool, but you got to do a Mandalorian game. A, that IP is just way too hot, way too popular, and B, it literally fits perfectly in a game. Like, it's perfect. There has to be a Mandalorian game. If a studio is not getting on that, you're making a mistake. It's going to sell well. So yeah, Tom, there's going to be lots of Star Wars games coming in the future. We already know Knights of the Old Republic remake. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be many Star Wars games coming. And there are still going to be EA ones. It's not going to be exclusively from EA. I don't know if we're going to see a Battlefront 3. It could happen, but at the very least, we're definitely getting from EA Fallen Order 2, which I'm excited for. I loved Fallen Order 1. Benji here. Benji saying, hi Benji, thoughts on the very low proportion of box sales in UK for Guardians of the Galaxy on Xbox? I think only 18% of sales were on the Xbox platform. Okay, Sony is strong in UK, but that's very low. I do have two thoughts on this, Benji. Two thoughts. So one thing I can tell you that is true and has been true for many years is that Xbox traditionally, I cannot say on this game, traditionally, Xbox has a stronger percentage of digital sales than PlayStation, which I know sounds weird. That could be shifting nowadays. It could be. I'd have to look at some more data. But traditionally, and let me be clear here, everyone, this isn't going to make up the whole gap, right? PlayStation clearly was the lead selling platform on Guardians, but I do want to go over this a little bit. Traditionally, something we've seen really since like the Xbox One generation, Xbox would, for many games, have a higher percentage of sales on digital than you would see on PlayStation. Lots of debate about why that could be. To be perfectly honest, I don't even know why exactly it plays that way. I'm sure lots of you have your own thoughts about why it could go that way. But it has been a trend, at least in the past historically, that digital is especially strong on Xbox. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, that could play an element. Again, I'm not going to say you're going to double, right? I'm not going to say Xbox is going to go from 18 to like 40% of sales. No, not by any means. But does that lift up? Does that maybe take it to like, in the low 20 percentile? It could. Other thing to keep in mind, of course, PlayStation does have a bigger install base. Anytime you have a bigger install base, you're going to get a higher proportion of sales than the lower install base consoles, right? That's just basic math. So you also have that element. And then I guess there is the debate, we're going to have to see over time, right? This is going to be something we're going to have to watch for years to come, I think, before we have a strong answer. But does Game Pass have any sort of effect in the way people think about buying games on the Xbox platform, right? I'm not telling you that it does impact third-party sales. I'm also not going to say that it 100% doesn't. We just need like way more data, right? Game Pass is still a pretty new thing. People are still getting used to Game Pass, used to subscribing, used to getting these games quote free. Of course, they're not free. You are paying for the service. But there's a lot of elements involved in this. So we're going to have to watch that over time, right? But that's a couple of my thoughts there, but it is low, right? 18%. It's not a great result in terms of like overall pie on a game like this. So yeah, we're going to have to watch that over time. But that's just a few of my thoughts. I think we had a couple super chats drop. Let me hit those super chats. We do got a couple. We got Brock here with a 5. Thank you so much, Brock. I'm a big fan of Monolith and their excellent Middle-earth games. However, they have not released a game since Shadow of War in 2017. What are they up to? Great question, Brock. It is surprising to me how long this studio has been quiet, because I agree with you. I liked both the Middle-earth games. I don't think that they're like the best games of all time, or anything like that, but I did really enjoy both of them. Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, I thought both games were very solid, and we don't get many Lord of the Rings games, and that's like a beloved IP. So here's my thoughts, Brock. I had thought, and this was like just me thinking, this wasn't insider info, I had assumed that they were working on a new Lord of the Rings game. But I was thinking maybe it's not tied to like Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War, right? Obviously still Lord of the Rings, but maybe it's something like completely different. And that's why it's taking them longer to announce it. Because even though they're using the same IP and world, if it's going to be like in Rivendell and, all sorts of other places, that's going to take like a ton of work to spin up this new project compared to the other two, which primarily took place in Mordor, right? So that's what I was thinking. And then there was this like rumor that was floating around, and I have no idea if this is true at all, but there was a rumor floating around that Monolith's making a new IP, which to me would be very surprising because it's a WB studio, and traditionally we know WB wants their studios working on IP that they have rights to, right? That's why you see Lord of the Rings games. That's why you see Mortal Kombat games. It's why you see DC games, now Harry Potter games, because it's their property, right? And they view their gaming studios as kind of like an extension of like their movie and show business. So I would have assumed, hey, Monolith's that Lord of the Rings studio, and maybe they are. But I know there was a rumor out there that Monolith was tackling a new IP. Again, I want to be very clear. I have zero idea if they are. But if it is a new IP, that could also explain why it's taking longer. Because, anytime you make a new IP, that takes more time than working on something that's established. Because you have to create the world. You have to create the characters, the concepts. What even is this thing? So those are my two thoughts, Brock. I think the main reason it's been so long is it's one of those two things. Either it really is a new IP that they're making over there, or I think it probably is a Lord of the Rings game, but it's a lot different than Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor were, and that's why it's taking so much longer. But we should hear something soon. I would think that Monolith at the very least will announce their new game next year in 2022. I don't expect Monolith to release a game next year. WB's slate is way too packed with games next year, but I do expect to see Monolith announce their game, and probably with a 2023 release, right? That would make the most sense. If it's later than that, that's surprising, because that'd be like over 6 years between games. That's a long time. So that's going to be my guess for you, Brock. Expect an announcement next year with a 2023 release date. Thank you for that super chat. Timmer here. Timmer72299 with a 5 super chat. Thoughts on the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time's budget being only $12 million. Found this a few days ago. Plus, keep being awesome. Thank you so much, Timmer. Thank you for being so awesome. Thanks for digging up so much stuff on Twitter all the time for us. Yeah, that's pretty wild, right? Like, we look at this all the time. Like, you see how much games budgets have inflated over the last few generations. It used to be like expensive games. And don't get me wrong, there were outliers even a long time ago that cost, 20, 30, 40 million. Like, you would see some of those. They were pretty rare. But what I would say to this, Timmer, is what it really highlights is how game budgets have just skyrocketed, right? I mean, trust me when I say Breath of the Wild 2's budget compared to 12 million, it's going to be with marketing spend. I mean, I could see that game being close to 100 million budget whenever you factor in development time, studio, and marketing. Again, I don't know if just pure development on Breath of the Wild 2 will cost 100 mil, but once you factor in marketing costs too, wouldn't surprise me if that's like a $100 million budgeted game. So it just shows you, man, like gaming budgets have astronomically increased over, the last few generations. And that's a big part of why games take so long nowadays, right? They take a long time because these games are so much more complex. You have so many more people, right? It used to be like you could make a quote AAA for the time game with I don't know, less than 100 people or maybe like 100 max. Nowadays, we see games that get 1,000 plus people on them. Like, not that uncommonly. So once you factor in like outsourcing and stuff, many AAA games have over 1,000 people working on them. So yeah, it's wild, Timmer. Obviously, Nintendo made a bag off that with only 12 million budget, but it really highlights how much things have increased. Thank you for that super chat, Timmer. Benji here with a 10 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. Hi, Benji. Bloomberg is reporting a 20% drop in hardware forecast for the Switch. That is a great question, Benji. Because of the semiconductor shortage, shall we expect the same 20% impact for Sony and Microsoft? Great question, Benji. Here's what I'll say. I would not expect Sony and Microsoft to have to adjust as much as Nintendo does in terms of their forecasts. Because here's the thing. Nintendo was, they were forecasting huge numbers comparatively to Sony and Microsoft because the Switch is so deep in its life cycle. Its manufacturing cycle is very mature, right? They've been making these platforms these consoles for many, many years now. So they have that down to a science. They've got a great manufacturing up and running. And, the Switch has been relatively available and in its prime. So they're forecasting a lot higher units. Sony and Microsoft in general, internally right now, these consoles didn't come out until after and during the semiconductor shortage. So they're well aware, of the issues that they're going to be facing. So I would say, we don't know for sure what Microsoft's forecasting publicly. We know that Sony's forecasting still PlayStation 5 to be the fastest selling PlayStation ever. Could there be some slight adjustments to that? I would say it's possible. However, keep in mind, we did have Microsoft just announce on their last earnings call that they actually shipped more Series X and S than they expected. So I suspect, Benji, that Nintendo out of the three is taking a bigger hit in terms of forecasts out of the three, simply because they were being a lot more bullish, which makes sense, right? For all the reasons we just stated, over Sony and Microsoft. So could they take some hit, to what they forecast? Maybe, but I doubt it's as high as 20% like Nintendo's going to face. So, the semiconductor shortage isn't ending soon. We've talked about this. Expect sellouts deep into next year for the new platforms. Could be even the entire year, but I've said on this chat a bunch. I don't expect Series X. Series S is a bit of a different story, but I don't expect Series X and PlayStation 5 consoles to just be sitting on store shelves. You can just walk in and buy them, in most markets at least, until deep into the summer of next year at the earliest. And that could be all the way through next year, right? I'm just saying, like, let's say things go amazing. Maybe late summer you start to see that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, these consoles are going to be sold out still for a long time. So, yep, it's a bummer, right? It's a bummer because think about how much higher these consoles. I mean, keep in mind, PlayStation 5 is the fastest selling PlayStation of all time. Xbox Series X and S are the fastest selling Xbox consoles of all time. Switch, as we know, has had incredible holds. It's dropping slightly, right? I've said it on this chat. I think 2020 was the peak year for the Switch, and it's going to steadily drop after this, but smaller declines. But again, look at how healthy it is. Like, look at how good everything's selling, and that's with shortages. I mean, it really just shows you if there was no semiconductor problem, just imagine how high hardware sales would be. They'd be incredible, right? So it's a bummer. Like I said, Sony and Microsoft might be adjusting a little bit, but Nintendo's probably making the bigger adjustments of the three. Thank you for that super chat, Benji. Brock with another 2 super chat here. Thank you so much, Brock. Your personal game of the year as of now. It's Deathloop for me, Brock says. I need to get back to Deathloop. I played like the first mission, and then I was like deep into like the second mission, and I put the console in rest mode, and next time I came back, it had exited the game. And the way Deathloop works, like once the game's exited, you have to restart your loop. And I was so frustrated, I literally stepped away from the game and started playing other stuff. I'm going to go back to it. I loved what I played of Deathloop. It wasn't like a knock against the game. It was more just like, dude, I put this in rest mode. How come I come back and my game is, and I know a lot of people have issues with PlayStation 5's rest mode, right? I'm not saying it's Deathloop's fault. Rest mode can be a little weird with PS5. So that's a bummer. I'm going to get back to Deathloop. The little bit I played of it did seem amazing. For me, my game of the year right now, I think it's Returnal. I really think it's probably Returnal. I keep, which speaking of runs, right, and having to restart runs, I keep going over in my head, like, as we're getting close to the end of the year, I keep going, man, what's a game that just in my mind, it just still stands out to me so strong? And man, is that Returnal. That atmosphere, y'all know I love like sci-fi, dark sci-fi horror type elements. That gameplay was so good. The atmosphere was so creepy, and the level design was so incredible. I think it's Returnal. I think Returnal is probably my game of the year right now. And that's tough, right? Because I've played a lot of great stuff this year. For me, it's always really hard to narrow down a game of the year or even a top 10, because I'm one of those types of people that like so many different genres. Some people kind of stick to a couple genres. I'm one of those people that plays like everything. So making a top 10 is always tricky for me. But like if I had to pick, I think it's probably Returnal. I think Returnal is probably my game of the year as of now. I'm not gonna say it's a lock. Once I do my actual game of the year list, I will fully finalize on something. But I think it's Returnal. I think Returnal is probably my current game of the year. But I've played a lot of good stuff. Tales of Arise is in there for me. Life is Strange True Colors is in there for me. Psychonauts 2 is in there for me. Guardians of the Galaxy is going to make my top 10 list. Like, there's been a lot of great stuff. But I think Returnal. The Deadly 8. Here we go. What's your thoughts on the Sega x Microsoft partnership? This has been a hot button topic. Could this mean cloud gaming will evolve and become bigger than we anticipated? And could this lead to Sega making exclusive titles for cloud? All right, let's talk about Sega and Microsoft. This has gotten some wild debates online. So, couple things we need to take into account here. What is this partnership, right? What is it, first of all? Is it, hey, Sega, we're making games for Microsoft now? No. So to be clear, and as Deadly 8 pointed out here, this partnership, and as my title is for, it's really the alliance, and that is the word they used, is about cloud gaming in particular. Now, we are going to talk about what this means for the Xbox business, because despite what some people say, it does have an impact on Xbox business, and we can talk about why it does here in a little bit. But it's really about Azure, right? Microsoft's cloud servers. It's about Microsoft helping Sega. Sega basically, in their messaging and what they're talking about, they want to make more global games, right? They want to make more games that appeal to a wide audience, that are bigger, right? Bigger AAA worldwide audience type games. And there is a belief inside the gaming industry currently that yes, cloud gaming is going to become a very big thing over, let's say, the next decade, right? Do I think that, and we've talked about this a bunch, do I think that most people are playing their games streaming, in the next year or two? No. Do I think even in 10 years, most people gaming are playing through the cloud? I don't know about that. But are a lot of people going to be accessing cloud? Yeah. And I would say especially in emerging markets, right? The thing is through things like mobile, tablets, etc. There's going to be so many ways for people to access games that cloud is going to become a big thing. Cloud, streaming, all this sort of stuff. So Sega's moving that way to here's the thing. You don't want to be a company that has no plan for cloud and streaming, and all of a sudden this does become a big thing in a decade, right? Most of this right now, what we're seeing is just building up for the future. It's not saying cloud's here tomorrow and that's what we're all doing. It's making sure you have an infrastructure, making sure you have a plan to do all this stuff. And basically, Sega wants Microsoft's help with their expertise in this department, building out a development environment to help Sega, and obviously it's going to help Microsoft too, right? Working with another team and working with another studio and really getting more and more knowledge about how this is all going to work. So that's kind of like the basis of what this partnership's about, right? It's really primarily about Azure, cloud, and streaming. Now, let's get to what does this mean for Microsoft and Xbox, right? The big, giant debate. It does have impact, and here's why. Again, people forget. Xbox now to Microsoft, it's like all gaming. And however that's going to work, right? If it's another company partnering with Azure It plays into their gaming ecosystem, their gaming idea. Microsoft's idea for gaming is as wide of a net as possible, right? It's not about just an Xbox console. We've talked about this a bunch. It's about streaming. It's about this. It's about that. It's about et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, do I think that Sega is going to be coming out here making tons of exclusives for Xbox, right? You see some people running around saying that. Oh, here we go. This is leading to exclusive games. It's leading to Microsoft acquiring Sega. No, I wouldn't say any of that yet. But does this mean a tighter partnership, a better relationship? I don't see how you could say it can't, right? That's one thing I haven't understood, is that some people saying this means nothing. How does it mean nothing whenever literally the people that are brokering this deal and working out these things, I mean, it's Sarah Bond is part of it, right? She's literally Team Xbox. Like that, her role is Xbox within Microsoft. And you saw with Sega's PR announcement, even on their own website, the person from Microsoft's side who announced this was Sarah Bond. You have basically a gaming discussion, a gaming discourse going on between these companies, and that will naturally form a better relationship, right? Anytime you're talking to each other, working out deals, it's going to lead to a better relationship. Again, does this mean acquisitions? No. Does this mean exclusive games? No. But does it mean a better relationship between Xbox and Sega, which could benefit both parties down the line? Yeah, absolutely, right? So those are kind of the things I would take in mind with this. I wouldn't think, oh, Microsoft's buying Sega next year. I wouldn't say anything like that. But I also would not say, I think it's a mistake to say, this means nothing. It means nothing for Xbox. I would say that's not true at all. Not true at all. And I do expect you're going to see a lot of Sega support on Xbox in the coming years. We already are starting to see that with things like Yakuza. I would expect that to continue, right? Again, I don't think you're going to see probably many exclusives from Sega on Microsoft, but you're going to see a lot of Xbox support. I can guarantee you that. I mean, why else would Sega be talking about a global game? If you really want to make global games, you have to be multi-platform. And that's going to be, tying into all this. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think you're seeing people too radical on both sides about it. It means nothing. It means everything. But it is an important deal, and we'll have to watch down the road how it goes. Brad Myers. Matt Booty mentioned this year that Microsoft plans to release a first-party game every quarter. But Xbox doesn't seem to have a first-party game for Q1 2022. Ooh, that's a good point, Brad. That is a good point. Let me think. Do they have anything for Q1? Definitely I would say, yeah, probably not anything AAA, Brad, unless... Nah, that would be too short of a cycle for AAA. Maybe, Brad, they have something small coming, right? Keep in mind that Microsoft has their studios working on big giant stuff and also some smaller scale stuff as well. Look at like Grounded that we saw come out of Obsidian, right? That was made by I think the original development team for Grounded was like 12 people or something. So, Brad, maybe they have something really small scale. Because if it's first quarter, that could be as late as like March. So if they announce something at the Game Awards, it's like a small team inside Microsoft that's going to put out a little project, maybe. Here's what I would say, Brad. Definitely the goal inside Microsoft right now, and you've heard Phil say this as well as Matt Booty, is eventually, yes, a game every single quarter. And I've talked about, I think eventually their goal is more than that. I think more than one game per quarter. Now, does it mean more like giant AAAs? Are we going to get 2 giant AAA games per quarter? Not every quarter, maybe some. We're seeing that right now. Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite are launching back-to-back. So some quarters you might get that. But eventually the minimum expectation is a big game every quarter. And eventually I think there's going to be even more than that on certain quarters. So I would say, and a lot of people have talked about this. You've heard Jeff Grubb talk about it and others. 2023 is really the year that you're going to see Microsoft first party start firing on all cylinders. 2022, you're going to see an uplift, but 2023 on is really where you're going to see the full weight of Microsoft first party. And there's a big key reason for that. A lot of the studios Microsoft acquired, they were already in contracts and in deals on games that, had other publishing partners, right? Look at Psychonauts 2. That was a game when they acquired Double Fine, that was already, through another source. Look at Deathloop from Arcane, right? That was already with PlayStation. That was already a signed deal. Look at when they acquired the team behind We Happy Few, Compulsion. When they acquired them, We Happy Few was already in the works and it was already being done, through Gearbox. So they already had so many deals. Obsidian, The Outer Worlds, right? Like, look at all these studios I'm naming that already had pre-existing contracts, pre-existing deals on games they had to honor. So they had to get through all of those games first. Then they could start working on first-party games. So that's going to take years, right? So keep in mind, you're going to start to see that uplift next year, but 2023 on, that's really when Microsoft first-party studios starts like really firing, where you're going to start seeing tons of games from them. So you'll see an uplift next year, but 2023 is the year. I thought I might have seen a super chat. Let me check if I missed one. Nope, I didn't miss one. Okay, we're good. Thank you for a pretty solid turnout today, everyone. I honestly had no idea what it would be like because, like I said, it hasn't been the craziest news week. So thanks for a good turnout. Miles Morales. Hey there, Benji. PlayStation third-person action adventure games are great, but we need diversified games. I actually do agree with this to an extent. Do you think we will get those RPGs, MMOs, fighting, or will Microsoft specialize in these instead? Miles, I do think that there's a movement within Sony, and we're going to have to see some of these games, but I do think there's a movement in Sony to diversify more, because I do agree with you that Sony, these games all do feel very different from each other, and I don't agree with some of the fanboy stuff you see with PlayStation, right? Where people are like, oh, it's all just cookie cutter, the same thing out of PlayStation Studios. They're all these third-person narrative games. They do all have quite a bit of a different feel, right? Like Spider-Man, for example, feels way different than The Last of Us Part 2. Are they both third-person games? Yes. Are they both story-driven? Yes. But they feel way different, right? When I play Spider-Man, I'm not sitting in my head thinking, boy, this is like The Last of Us. Like, they feel totally different. So they've done a good job about, even if they have a similar concept in terms of being those third-person narrative-driven games, the IP still feel a lot different. But I do agree, Miles, that I think you still pump out some of those games. You still pump out the Ghost of Tsushimas. You still make the Spider-Mans, the Last of Us, the Uncharted, all that stuff. But I do think you need a little bit more genre in there as well. And I think Sony's aware of that. I really, really, truly do. And I think you're going to see some other stuff from them. Keep in mind, we have Bend making a brand new IP. We have no idea what that's going to be like. We have hints, and we have no idea if this is true, but hints through hirings that maybe Guerrilla Games is making a first-person shooter on top of Horizon, right? Clearly, Horizon's the focus, but they did a lot of hiring for first-person shooter experience, which does seem weird to do for Horizon. Not impossible, but if you're hiring a bunch of FPS people, it does kind of seem like you might have a first-person shooter in the works there. So keep in mind, we've got that. We've got Insomniac that's always making multiple games. Who knows what could come out of them? We know that Santa Monica is making a brand new IP. Who knows what that could be like? So, Miles, I think they will diversify more. Are they still going to make a lot of those third-person narrative games? Yes, that's what's worked for them. That's what they've been successful with. But I think you will see Sony do more different things than they did last gen. King Lizards, hope you're doing good. There was a big misunderstanding that happened last live stream. I was asking you specifically about when do you think, Nintendo will stop first-party support on Switch. If Switch 2 releases in 23, first-party games specifically. Now, that's a great question. Sorry for that misunderstanding. Nintendo will probably drop first-party support for Switch. You'll still see cross-gen games from Nintendo for probably almost everything for at least a year, I would think. That seems to be kind of the industry standard right now, at least a year of cross-gen games. You're seeing Microsoft do that, you're seeing Sony do that, and I suspect you'll see Nintendo do that as well with how successful Switch has been. So I would say at least 1 year. I would say at least 1 year, whenever the Switch 2 ends up being. If the Switch 2 comes out in 2023, I think at least you see Nintendo first-party games for a full year on the regular Switch. So, and this is a total guess, right? We haven't really seen this transition much from Nintendo like this more in the modern era. We saw Breath of the Wild be cross-gen. We saw Zelda a lot of times, right? Zelda was also, before Breath of the Wild, Twilight Princess. So I would suspect still a year. That's a total guess, though, King Lizard, but I would say at least 1 year of cross-gen titles from Nintendo. It's just kind of the industry standard now. I put it this way, I don't expect them to just immediately drop support of Switch, right? If Switch 2 comes out 2023, I don't think immediately, well, no more Nintendo games on regular Switch. Install base is way too big to ignore that. And the install base on the Switch, regular Switch, they buy crazy first-party software output. So it would be a mistake. So at least 1 year of first-party games, even after Switch 2's out. Venom Harness. If Marvel continues to deliver quality title after quality title games, could the Marvel IP become more lucrative than ever before? Could publishers and developers fight over it? Well, Venom, we're in a very interesting scenario with Marvel games. Man, I'll tell you y'all, I'm worried about Guardians. I'm worried about Guardians of the Galaxy. We talked about this, I think, on the last live chat. The early numbers for Guardians don't look super impressive, right? We saw on Steam that it did about 1/3 of what Avengers did on concurrent players. We just got data out of the UK that stated that Guardians did, I think, under half of what Avengers did at launch. Launch for Guardians of the Galaxy, to me, unfortunately, and I say this unfortunately because this is literally the game I'm currently playing, and I am blown away with this game. I am literally blown away with this game. And I think it's underperforming at launch. Again, I'm only speaking of at launch here. My hope, and this is a big hope, I hope word of mouth goes around about this game and we see some great legs through the holidays, right? That's really my hope. Hopefully this game performs really strong over the coming months. But Venom right now, the only one who's been able to prove that they can turn Marvel games into giant performers is Insomniac and Sony. Like, that's it. Outside of that, we have not had a serious hit yet. Square Enix literally just said basically on their last investors that Avengers is a commercial failure for them. Guardians, again, at launch isn't looking great. We saw Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on Switch, which only did about $1 million. Wasn't a huge budgeted game, but again, not a giant success. We saw Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I think it was called, massively underperform. The literal only huge, and I'm not talking about mobile because there's actually a lot of successes for Marvel in the mobile space, but for these console-based games, it's really only Sony and Insomniac with Spider-Man that have proven they can get giant sellers out of it. So I'm hoping Guardians can prove that wrong and have great legs, because I'm telling y'all, you need to play it. It's really good. So Venom, we need to see someone other than Sony prove that they can get big hitters out of Marvel. And then if that happens, right, then you could see publishers fight over it. Yes, I do think so. We just got another announcement for another AAA Marvel game. It's going to be narrative focused. It's coming from Amy Hennig and her new studio. I'm very excited for that. Amy Hennig, of course, is really famous for her work on Uncharted and the Legacy of Kain series. She's writing for Spoken. She's like co-writing for Spoken for Square Enix. So clearly that's going to have a huge narrative push. So I'm hopeful, Venom, but Guardians is worrying me. I'm not going to lie. A little worried about Guardians' performance. All right, I think we just had a super chat. Tauncy K here with a 10 super chat. Thank you so much, Tauncy. Given latest box sales from UK, GI Biz, Capcom, and other publishers, is the ratio for Xbox and PlayStation just representing the sales ratio of hardware, or Xbox players just buying less games because of Game Pass? Tonsi, we actually talked about this a little bit right at the start of the chat, like right at the start. I'm going to just really quick go over it because you did do a super chat, but then I'm going to go back to some other questions. But we did talk about this right at the beginning of the stream. Basically, a couple things here. First of all, historically, and I don't have near enough data to say that currently this is the trend, but I do have enough data historically to say this was the trend. Xbox has a higher percentage of software sales done digitally than PlayStation does for most games. Is that all games? No. Is it every game? No. For many games, yes. And again, this is historical data. This could have radically shifted recently, especially with Microsoft first party. I'm not going to go into details because some of this is totally NDA, but like Xbox first party games were doing huge digital splits before people had any idea. I'm serious. We're talking years ago. High percentages of digital. So huge debate about why that could be. I'm going to leave that up to other people to theorize. I don't have enough data to outright claim that. But again, traditionally, does Xbox sell more digital by percentage? I'm not talking total units, percentage than PlayStation? Yes, that was true in the past. Things could be changing now. That could be one factor. Another factor is going to be, yes, install base. There's just no debate. PlayStation has a bigger install base than Xbox. So clearly the console with the bigger install base is going to sell more units. So you have to factor that in as well. And as you say, Tonsi, could Game Pass be influencing consumer spending habits? It's potentially possible, but we need to see way more data before we outright say that's a fact. Game Pass is still too new on the marketplace, I think, to clearly make, a statement like that. But let's watch over time. So that's a few of my thoughts. Thank you for that super chat. Hopefully that helps. And we talked about it a little bit more at the beginning of the stream. You can go back and watch that too, if to get more context as well. Kieran Buckley here with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Kieran. Hi, Benji. Next year's game lineup for all 3 platforms looks amazing, but because of COVID, any titles you could see being delayed out of 2022? Here's what I'll say, Kieran. I do think we're probably going to see some delays next year, but I actually think that next year's impact is going to be less to do with COVID, and I think you're going to see publishers fighting over release dates. I honestly think that's going to be an issue. Look at February. Like, if you look at February alone, we're talking within like a 3-week period, something like that, like a very short window. You literally have Horizon Forbidden West, Dying Light 2, Elden Ring, and Saints Row. 4 AAA. These are all AAA games within like days and weeks of each other. Now, that's kind of wild. I am telling you right now, I expect one of those games to get delayed out of that window. I doubt it's going to be Horizon, and I doubt it's going to be Elden Ring. But I won't be surprised if you see Dying Light or Saints Row move a week or two. So do I think we're going to see delays next year? Yeah. Is some of that going to be because of COVID? Yeah. But I think you're going to see a lot of battling for release dates. You see this in movies. You see this in games, right? You see people move around depending on what's launching because there's only so much money to go around, right? People get paid either every week or every other week. They only have so much money to spend in a short window of time. So I think you're going to see a lot of jockeying for release dates next year because there's so many games, because so much got delayed out of 2020 and 2021 that really made 2022 crazy stacked. So yeah, we'll see some delays. Do I think delays next year are going to be as severe as they were the last year and a half or so? No. Studios have really had time to adjust to working from home now, like quite a long time. And also, slowly people are starting to go back to studio work. Not everybody by any means, but slowly that's starting to go back. So next year I expect the pure COVID impact to be smaller than we've seen in the last year and a half, but a lot of jockeying for release dates. Yeah. Thanks for that super chat. Oh yeah, and any games that I could see, like I said, I think Dying Light or Saints Row get pushed a little, not a lot, maybe just a week or two or something like that, just to give a little bit of a window. Other than that, though, hard to say. I don't expect really any of the announced games right now to get big delays. Like, even when Elden Ring got delayed, it was like a month, right? It wasn't like a huge delay. They pushed it back. I don't even think it was a full month. It was like a few weeks. So, maybe some small delays like that for the stuff that's announced, but nothing giant. Not like, hey, we're delaying this game a year like Halo got. Nothing like that. All right. Thank you for all those super chats today, everybody. We had way more questions than I expected, which is a good thing. Better turnout than I expected. Thanks so much, everyone. Brandon. Hi, Benji. Do you think it is possible for the PS4 to sell 120 million lifetime? Brandon, I would have literally bet on it, but no. PS4 is probably not going to make 120 million lifetime. And the main reason it's not going to be is because Sony basically killed it, and they killed it basically because they had to, in my opinion. They haven't outright said that this is why, but like, dude, they're not shipping PS4s right now. Like the last quarter, which is the last 3 months, I think it was like 200,000, right? I'm saying this literally off the top of my head. I think it was 200,000. Pretty sure it's 200,000, I think, off the top of my head. If I'm wrong on that, I apologize because this is off the top of my head. It's really low, right? The main reason this happened, put it this way. If the pandemic had not happened and there was not chip shortages, do I think that PS4 would have made 120 million? 1,000%. It was definitely on pace to. Right now, it's basically completely stalled out at 116. And my opinion is the reason is because they need every manufacturing resource they can get to get PS5s made. Like, if you have a choice, and yes, I know they're different manufacturing processes, but it's still there's only so much bandwidth to get chips made of anything, to get, the parts made of anything, to get literally manufacturing on the manufacturing line, anything. Like, everyone's battling over this. It's not just consoles. It's not even just video games. It's truck parts, car parts, everything is just battling for manufacturing resources. So if you're Sony, I mean, the same thing has happened with the Xbox One. It's just dead. It's gone. If you're Sony, right now, you're putting basically every resource you can into getting those PS5s made. And it's essentially killed PS4. So they're barely shipping anything. Barely. I mean, barely. We're talking low 100,000 units per quarter. At the rate they're doing right now, it would take years to get to 120. I don't think it's going to happen. No, PS4 is probably going to finish its life right around like 117. I think it's at 116.6. So probably in that 117 range. Maybe they can eke it up to 118. But again, that might be tough. 120 is probably not going to happen. And you basically can blame the pandemic for that. Like, basically, it would have done it without it. It definitely would have hit 120 million without it, but pandemic kind of killed it. All right, Gary Sanchez. What a game announcement or gameplay reveal would you be the most excited for? Oh man, if it was shown off at the Game Awards. I don't think it's going to happen, but I feel like an announcement of Half-Life 3, Grand Theft Auto 6, or a new Mario Kart would be huge. All right, let's do two here. Let's do one that's completely pie in the sky, unrealistic, but we're just going for pure hype. And then let's do, like one or two that are like realistic. I'm getting a notification that there's no data. Hopefully there is. Okay, so one pie, all the ones you listed would be gigantic. But we're talking personal, just total pie in the sky, totally unrealistic to be there. I would say Dragon's Dogma 2. And that game does appear to be happening, but I just think there's like almost no chance it's at the Game Awards. But Dragon's Dogma 2 for me would be pure hype. I love Dragon's Dogma 1. That game is going to get revealed, but I don't think it's going to be at Game Awards. That's pretty unrealistic, but again, that could fall somewhat realistic. Alan Wake 2, not going to happen. Alan Wake 2 is in development, but it's very early in development, so I can't see Alan Wake 2 being there. In fact, that's pretty unrealistic considering that game just started production, but I'll throw Alan Wake 2 in there. I would lose my mind. That's a couple unrealistic ones. One that's realistic that will get me massively hyped that I do think is going to be there is Hellblade 2. I really enjoyed Hellblade 1. I really enjoyed Hellblade 1. It wasn't the greatest game I ever played, but like I really liked it. But I have a feeling that Ninja Theory is going to take Hellblade 2 to like new levels. It's going to be a lot bigger project, way more resources. Hellblade 2 I do expect to be there, and that's going to make me freaking hyped. I'd love to see what Naughty Dog's working on. I do think Sony's going to have a big announcement at the Game Awards, but I don't know what that's going to be. I'd love to see something out of Naughty Dog, whatever it is, if it's the Last of Us remake or if it's something else. I'd love to see something out of Naughty Dog there. I mean, there's a lot, right? But that's a few, Gary. That's a few that would hype me to the moon. I think we had a couple super chats drop. Let me hit those super chats. We did. Timmer with a 20. Holy cow, Timmer. Dude, you don't got to drop one that big, Timmer. My goodness. Timmer here with a 20. Thank you so much, man. That is incredibly kind. Thoughts on Arcane Leon, studio director, and Machine Games co-founder leaving in October and August respectively, plus the Elder Scrolls series going from $400,000 budget for the first game and $200 million budget for Elder Scrolls shows. Yeah, so Timmer there piggybacking off the discussion we had earlier about game budgets astronomically increasing. Look at that. Elder Scrolls 1, $400,000 budget, ESO $200 million. Exactly. That just shows you that's a nice piggyback off what we were talking about earlier about just game budgets skyrocketing in the last couple gens. Now, thoughts on the Arcane Leon and Machine Games departures. Here's a thing to keep in mind. Big studio departures get highlighted a lot in media and gaming circles, and to a degree it makes sense, right? To a degree it makes sense that these kinds of things get headlines, especially when it's a high-level position. But what I will tell you from talking to developers and like seeing their reactions over the last few years to these kinds of things, a lot of people leave a lot of companies. It's actually really common. Really, really common. Now, do I want to say that this sort of thing has like zero impact from the Bethesda Xbox deal? I don't think it does, but I don't know these people and I don't know their story. So I'm not going to outright tell you it has nothing to do with the Xbox acquisition because I don't know them, right? Maybe if you talked to them, they'd say, we want to make multi-platform games, or we want to work at an independent studio, right? Now, one that's acquired by somebody. Who knows? Maybe they could tell you something like that. From the outside perspective, do I think that that has anything to do with these departures? No, it seems unlikely to me, especially because these studios are now going to have essentially more security and probably a bigger budget than they've ever had in their history. Anytime you get that first party funding and support, that's a pretty big deal. So I would say it's unlikely, but you'd have to talk to them. But overall, my thoughts, I would say people tend to panic about departures when they see, I mean, you saw this with Naughty Dog. You've seen this with, Santa Monica in the past. You've seen this with Rockstar. I'll be honest. Here's what I'll say. The Rockstar departure of one of the brothers. I'm trying to remember which one left. Was it Sam? I can't remember. The one that left Rockstar has me way more worried than like these kinds of departures, because the brother that left Rockstar was like the one who did a lot of the writing. And I know they both do. But I know he was responsible for a lot of the writing of like Red Dead Redemption 2. And in my opinion, that's one of the best written games of all time. A lot of debates you can have. A lot of people don't like the gameplay and stuff, but purely narrative, I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the crowning achievements of the video game industry ever in terms of writing. And he left. That's pretty freaking worrying. So something like that has me way more worried than these. Dan, Bigelow saying Dan. Yeah, that worries me a lot more than these departures. But, who knows? Who knows? But I don't think it has to do with the Xbox acquisition. I think these people probably just had a different thing they wanted to do, right? Big departures happen all the time. It's actually really common. And I'm sure you know this, Timmer, from following LinkedIn, right? People leave studios like all the time. 2 super chats here. Yeah, Dan Hauser. Thank you, Bigelow. Yeah, Dan. That's the one that has me really worried. We need to see what Grand Theft Auto 6 looks like. I'm not worried about gameplay and stuff from Rockstar in the future because, it's Rockstar. Narrative. I'm a little concerned from Dan's departure how that narrative is going to look in Grand Theft Auto 6 in their future games. I know he wasn't the only writer, but I know he was responsible for a lot of the writing at Rockstar, and that's pretty concerning for me. Okay. Plastic Arts Podcast here with a 2 super chats. First of all, 5 saying, Benji boy, no question. Just keep being the dopest in the biz. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts. Means a lot to me. Means a lot. The support's out of control. Out of control. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts. And then Plastic Hearts saying, did you already cover Netflix gaming premiering on Android? Thoughts on their potential success? Also, what freaking happened to Stadia? Yeah, Netflix gaming. This is really interesting. And I think this could become really big, actually. Now, Netflix gaming is starting pretty small. Anyone that missed this, like, Netflix gaming has now officially kicked off. Like, before they announced that they're entering the gaming space, but we weren't truly there. Netflix gaming is here. Now, it's first on Android, later on iOS. Now, for you, and I know some people are going to think I don't care about mobile games. I totally get that. I actually play 0 mobile games. None. Like, I don't play any. I have in the past at times, but like very few and far between. I'm not a mobile gamer. Here's what I'll say. I don't know that this will always only be a mobile thing. Is this going to be mobile focused first? Yeah, Netflix is going to be definitely mobile gaming focused first, right? That's the easiest thing for them. It's the thing that makes the most sense. I will not be surprised though, y'all, if in the next 5 years you can stream games directly through Netflix on your TV. Like, I think that has to be coming. It has to be inevitable. Netflix is accessed through mobile, huge, but also through people's TVs, through people's consoles. You know, I could see the console manufacturers blocking it through the system, but like TVs, I could see this becoming a big deal. I think Netflix gaming has a very real shot of making impact in this industry way more than Google did and way more than Amazon does through their streaming services. And that's because Netflix already has the infrastructure built in terms of having huge hundreds of millions of subscribers and already being an entertainment-focused brand. They already have that giant built-in Netflix audience. And again, yes, it's movies, yes, it's TV, but Netflix is literally a company that's built around entertainment. Amazon and Google are not. Now, do they have entertainment offerings that they're building up? Yes, but Netflix literally is an entertainment company. So Netflix gaming could become a big deal, y'all. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on that. I would say, you know, don't expect things to get crazy in the first couple of years, but down the road, Netflix gaming can become definitely, possibly a big contender in this space. And then in terms of what happened to Stadia, it basically just failed. There's no way around it. They're still trying to ride it out. The technology, from what I understand, with Stadia is really good, but they killed all their in-house development. I don't expect Stadia to really exist in a large way in the next few years. They basically killed that thing. So, yeah, I think Stadia is pretty much done. All right, super chats are cleared for now. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, still lots of free questions to get to. Lots of them. We're going to rock them out. Batman Forever, hello there. What do you think will happen next year? Publishers making their own events or a big E3 revival with all publishers attending except a few? Batman, I think next year's E3 will be better than this last E3 because I do think it's probably going to be in person. Like, I think you're finally going to get media there again and all that. I don't think it's going to be an online thing because of vaccines, because of, you know, you're seeing a lot of things open up. I do think E3 next year will be in person, at least for media. I don't 100% know if E3 goes fully open in terms of like having all of, you know, like regular people being able to attend it. Maybe they push that off one more year. I do think you see at least it open to media next year. And just, it's been so long since we've had like a big industry get together like that. Where all the media is there, the influencing type people are there, like for everyone to just get together and talk about games. It's been so long that that I think by itself will make E3 bigger than it was last year. But I don't think we're going to see E3 back to its true heights because I don't think Sony ever goes back to E3. Could be wrong on that, but I don't expect to ever see Sony at E3 ever again for all time. I'm serious. I know that sounds like a big, bold statement, but I believe that Sony thinks that they don't need E3 at all and that they can get big enough viewership on their own and they don't have to pay the ESA anything. I could be wrong, but I don't think you see Sony ever go back. But I do think it's going to be bigger. And the main reason, like I said, is just getting all media, all these publishers together for the first time. And really, by that time, what will have been like 2 years will naturally make people want to bring more and show bigger. So I think so. That would be what I expect. Bigger than last year's E3, but not to its true heights. Oh, Brock said, finally, I've been watching your excellent YouTube videos for a long time now, but I've never been able to attend a live stream. Happy to be here. Brock, we're so happy for you to be here, Brock. So happy. Thank you so much for that. You know, we don't, my streaming's so inconsistent. It's not at set times, and I don't stream really what would be the prime time for the market that I live in, right? Like kind of like that evening time frame. I do it what's here in the afternoon in the US. So who knows? Maybe I could have bigger viewership or stuff if I streamed at more prime times. But, you know, I just do the streams because I love them. I love talking with people. So I'm glad to see you here, Brock. We get, you know, basically like half the viewership from my stream usually comes after the stream. So it's like 50-50. Like half of it's live, half of it's afterwards. Great to see you here, Brock. Hope you're having fun with your first live one. Jose Nunez. Got to hear of you during Sacred Symbols Plus. Glad to have learned of your work and what you do. Thank you, Jose. That really means a lot. You know, here's what I want to say about that. I have had so many people reach out to me after that Sacred Symbols Plus appearance and being like super kind. And like, I got a lot of people that followed me and found out about me from Sacred Symbols. Here's what I want to say. I know not everyone is going to like everything Colin does. I know there's a ton of debate about all that, and I don't want to get into all that because, you know, people just get into messes and they get in fights. Here's one thing I can say. Colin has probably been like more supportive of me, and he has no reason to be. I'm just like a random guy covering the video game industry than pretty much almost anyone with a big platform. That means a lot to me, right? It definitely means a lot to me. So, yeah, thanks. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That to me, that says something. And again, we're not going to get into all sorts of other debates about politics and all that kind of stuff. I'm not interested in that. But I'm really thankful of that. Like I said, there's a lot of people with big platforms that don't really try to elevate other people or maybe only a couple people. He had no reason, like at all. I don't like know Colin for some of the really nice things he said about me. He said he brought me up when I had only like a few thousand followers on Twitter. He was giving me shout outs on Sacred Symbols. I didn't know him. I'd never had a conversation one-on-one with him until that Sacred Symbols Plus. And people really enjoyed it. So I'm really thankful for that. King of the Dry Bones. Do you think Nintendo could have repurposed their Toronto, etc., NOAA buildings as built-up development studios, or did they make the right choice consolidating it all to the main office? This is a great question, King of the Dry Bones. Anyone that missed this, basically Nintendo's closing and kind of selling off some of the buildings and studios that they had kind of in like the West. Keep in mind, these weren't like big development hubs. As we know, pretty much most of all Nintendo development is done in Japan. There's a few outliers of that, right? Like Retro. Retro is a US-based studio, but like the vast majority of Nintendo's in-house development is done in Japan. So, King of the Dry Bones, I would say like consolidating it kind of makes sense since it's already their hub. That's like Nintendo is still, unlike Sony, like Sony really has turned into really like they're a Japanese company, but PlayStation itself kind of isn't. And I know that sounds weird, but like, because it's still part of Sony. It's not like PlayStation's its own company. But if you look at PlayStation, like most of its development resources are not in Japan. And most of its leadership also don't come from Japan. Like PlayStation itself is very global. Whereas Nintendo is still a very Japanese company. Do they have people from the West that work there? Yeah. Do they have people in leadership positions from the West? Yeah. Do they have developers from the... Yes, for sure. But it's still a very, very Japanese company. So I kind of get why they consolidated it, because that's really their identity. That's still how they operate. That's still really like the thought processes at Nintendo. Do I think it would be cool to see them like diversify and branch out and make more Western studios just to have some different vibes within Nintendo? That would definitely be cool. But I get it. I totally get why they went that way, instead of like building them up into these big, huge studios on their own. Again, I think it would be cool just to get... Not that Nintendo lacks variety. They have tons of variety. But anytime you get people and studios in different places, you get a little bit of a different feel. Would have been cool, but I understand it. Justin Tanhill, do you think cloud gaming will be successful after what happened with Stadia? Yes, but you can't... I don't believe you can build a true business, like a big, big, big gaming business, off only streaming yet. Microsoft is really the one that I feel like is handling this right. Microsoft does not tell you, anytime you hear Phil Spencer talk, anytime you hear Satya talk, anytime you hear Matt Booty talk, Aaron Greenberg talk, none of these people, are Sarah Bond, none of them are coming out and telling you it's only streaming, you must do streaming, streaming's the future, right? They always talk about how streaming's additive. That, like, you know, it's a nice, it's like a big factor, but it's something on top of the existing gaming business. You hear Phil Spencer say, we're going to be making Xbox consoles for a long time. People are going to be playing Xbox consoles for a long time. Like, that's really, I believe, the correct method. Will streaming become big? Yes. Will it become a big expander of the market? I do truly think so. But can you build a business at least now? We're not talking like 50 years in the future. Now, can you build a giant, giant gaming business streaming only? I don't think so. Like we just talked about Netflix gaming, right? I think Netflix gaming can be successful in that it is part of Netflix, right? It's literally part of your subscription. If Netflix went out and created something separate, it's Netflix gaming, subscription only, you don't get it, streaming only, and it's not part of your Netflix subscription, I don't think they would be hugely successful. I think if you want to be really streaming successful, either it's that case where it's already part of your Netflix subscription, or it's just a piece of your business. It's not the whole thing. So successful, yes, but will a Stadia type model work right now? No, I don't think so. Not at all. Not right now. Sounds PP7. What's your guess on what Amy Hennig's Marvel game will be, and what kind of game would make the most sense for Disney as you look at their current lineup of games and announced games like Wolverine? Great question. We know one thing that came out, and I can't remember the actress's name, so I really apologize. But the actress from the campaign for Star Wars Battlefront, and she was in something else too, I can't remember. She is going to be one of the leads of this game. So we already know it has a very prominent, woman protagonist. We don't know that she's the only one, right? There could be other characters involved as well. In fact, being Marvel, I would suspect there would be other characters in this. A lot of people are wondering if it's Daredevil and she plays Elektra. That would really fit, to be honest. Like, I could totally see her being Elektra, right? I mean, anyone that's seen her and seen her work, I think you'd all agree, wow, yeah, she would totally make sense as Elektra. I don't know that she's Elektra or that this is Daredevil. Kinda would make sense from a gameplay perspective and a story perspective, but I have no idea about that. We already know Wolverine's taken. We already know Spider-Man's taken. We already know Guardians is taken. Captain America would seem kind of weird with her being such a prominent person in it. I mean, I guess maybe you could use her as like a Black Widow, and she would be part of a Captain America game, possible, because again, we don't know that she's the star, right? We know she's one of the starring characters in it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this game is her game, but she's clearly a part of it. I don't know. I don't know. I would have said X-Men, maybe. There's a ton of characters she could be if they're doing X-Men. She could be Jean Grey. She could be, we could go down the list. She could be Psylocke. There's a ton of people, right? X-Men, if I was Marvel, I'd want an X-Men game to get made. I know they're doing Wolverine, but Maybe you could do a game without Wolverine, but the other X-Men? I don't know. I don't know. But that's one factor, right? We do know that she's in it. Her as Elektra really makes sense to me, but we'll have to see. Benji, any idea if Activision is planning to produce non-Call of Duty games again? Yeah, anyone who's missed this, they're not right now. It seems that all the studios are working on Call of Duty exclusively, correct. What does this mean for other franchises? At some point, do I think Activision will make non-Call of Duty games again? Yes. Not right now. They need so many resources on Call of Duty because of Warzone, because of the yearly Call of Duty game they got to pump out. They're like so resource heavy on Call of Duty that they literally don't have the resources to spare on other things. I do think at some point you'll see Activision make some other stuff. Could be a few years, to be honest. They got in a lot of trouble with Vanguard. And it looks like they might have turned Vanguard around. We'll have to see what reviews come out, but some of the press buzz seemed decent for it, so we'll have to see. But that game at one point was in like a development disaster, and they threw a ton of resources at it, and it seems they probably got it fixed. So I'm not saying this game's going to be a disaster when it comes out, but that kind of got them in a bit of a hole. And then I think Warzone being so much more successful than probably they even expected meant that they needed to throw way more resources than they thought they would at it. So all these elements basically turned into, we got to throw everything at Call of Duty. Like right now, this is making so much money. We got to go all in. I think eventually Activision will do other stuff, but it could be a few years before they get like more resources freed up. Split89 saying, my boy, what is up, Split End? Best mod in the business. So great to see you, my friend. And then he asked a similar thing. Biggest dream to see revealed at TGA is one possible, one spicy one that'll never happen. Already answered that one, Split End. Leon, yeah, here we get our first question about Diablo and Overwatch. I'll go brief over this because there hasn't been many questions about it, so it seems less interest than I expected. But I will touch on this because it's a pretty big story. Leon says, dude, I can't wait that long for Overwatch 2. I just want to really briefly say something here about this, and I talked about it on Twitter. I'm a massive Overwatch fan. I still play Overwatch every single week. I have put in more hours on Overwatch, literally, than any game I've ever played of all time. We're talking thousands of hours. Listen, in retrospect, and I don't know whose decision this was, I suspect it came from pressure from Activision. Bobby Kotick would be my guess. I don't know this for sure, but my guess, judging by how things that happened with Destiny, for example, and other games in the past, my hunch would be Bobby Kotick is the one who pushed for Overwatch 2. However, that will go down possibly. I think it's gone. I don't think we're coming back. I think it finally came back. Okay, I think we're finally back. I'm sure we lost almost all of chat, which is totally understandable. Totally understandable. If anyone's still here, I'm going to pump out a few more questions. Good old internet here is going out as always. Really bad this time, apparently. Is anyone still